Hello loves, and welcome to my July wrap up. This is the monthly video where I run down what I read in the previous month. In the month of July, I managed to finish 24 books for a total of 4,540 pages and 90.62 hours of audio, and the average rating that I gave out this month was a 3.58, which more or less aligns to what my usual average overall is. Let's get into it, starting from the lowest rating and making our way to the best of the month. The lowest rating that I gave out in July was a 2.5, and that was to a graphic novel, Stranger Things Komchatka. I think it's supposed to be Russian, and this was by Todor Hristov. This is based on the Stranger Things universe based on the TV show. A lot of this is about two children whose father invented a machine that deals with the upside down stuff, and when he kind of refuses to help the Russian government anymore, the children are in danger. And I give this one a 2.5. While I do enjoy the Stranger Things series, I've never particularly been interested in the communism storylines or any of the secret government facility things. I am more interested in mythology of the monsters, so this one was just not gonna be my favorite regardless of how well executed it was, and I just found it kind of a boring plot, so a 2.5 for this one. Next we have two books at a 2.75 rating. The first one I feel bad about because this series is much beloved, and that is The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. It is the third book in the Thursday Murder Club series. I just don't think these books are for me. I don't find that the mysteries are particularly compelling, and there's just so many characters to try and keep track of. Most of them do not particularly stand out to me, and I know that this series, the strength is really supposed to be the characters, but I'm just not connecting with them the way that I would hope. The only one I really pay attention or care about is Elizabeth, who's this former spy. Mysteries of these ones are just super forgettable that I finished this very early in the month and couldn't tell you what the plot is because that's how little it stuck out to me. So 2.75. This series probably just isn't for me. The other book I gave a 2.75 to was Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This is about a group of college students who are paid by a wealthy patron to steal back Chinese artifacts from museums that have kind of maybe illegally claimed them and refused to return them. So based on that plot, I was hoping that it would focus a lot more on the rightfully so anger that some colonized countries have about their artifacts being essentially pillaged and plundered by colonizing countries and then withheld and never returned. I really enjoyed the aspects of the book that focused on that, but then the characters are college students, and there was a lot of this that focused on the relationship dynamics and drama between the different members of the group. I just didn't care. If maybe the characters had been a bit older and more mature, we could have focused on the theme that I found interesting, but this was just a miss for me in terms of the character dynamics. Next we have the books that I gave 3 stars to, and all of these books are graphic novels. So the first one is Exquisite Corpse by Penelope Bajoux. This is about a woman who is just kind of sitting on this park bench. She catches the attention of this man in his apartment building, and he calls her over, and she ends up becoming his muse because he is an author. The author is hiding a dark secret, so we go from there. I kind of enjoyed this one. I just thought it dragged a little bit. It was a little bit too long. Premise was pretty interesting. The art style was kind of bland, but it was alright. I'm not mad that I read it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to other people to pick up. It was just okay. Exquisite Corpse got a 3. Next is volume 6 of Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. This is a graphic novel that was originally a webcomic that tells a story about the Greek gods. In a modern day setting, there's hints of real mythology, but it is mostly, at this point from what I'm picking up, a unique story scan set with modern technology based mostly on the characters of Greek mythology, though how mythology accurate they are is probably up to more well-versed people than me to decide. This one just got a 3 for me. Again, I think I said the same thing about volume 5. I am just kind of sick of the will they won't they with Hades and Persephone. Like, we know they're gonna get together. I think they kissed in this book, and that was a huge dramatic thing, and she immediately was like, oh no, we shouldn't have done that. I'm like, girl, this is volume 6, and each of these volumes is pretty chunky. What do you mean? Still at the kissing is scandalous and embarrassing stage of their relationship. Like, I get a slow burn. The fire has to happen at some point. So just a 3 for me. I'm hoping that the next one connects a bit more. If you are a huge fan of mythology and want lore accurate things, this is not going to be for you. If you just want like reality show level drama where the reality show contestants are loosely based on Greek gods, this is probably for you. But like I said, volume 6 at this point, start with the first one, see if you like it. And the third graphic novel that I gave a 3-star to, I am also gonna throw in one of the 5 stars as well, because the 3-star is volume 2 of a graphic novel that I also read volume 1 of in July, and that is Faithless by Brian Azzarello. This is about a woman who is coming to terms with the fact that she has magical powers. She meets this super rich artist and starts a relationship with a singer, and how the relationship she has with those two people impacts her art and her entry into the art world. Some magical, demonic things going on in the background. I gave the first volume of this a 4 because I was enjoying that premise. I am always interested in like deal with the devil kind of stories. While there was some very explicit content in it, it at the time seemed to suit where the plot was going. Volume 2 I gave a 3 because I am still enjoying the demonic inclinations of the plot in this book, but my god, is the sex no longer serving the plot and seeming a bit more gratuitous. Can this girl say hello to someone without immediately trying to sleep with them? It just seems a little off, usually coming from a male author, to have their female character who is bisexual. I don't think her sexuality is explicit. It seems more an excuse to have characters naked than it is serving the plot at this point. 4 for the first one because I liked what the plot promised, but then volume 2 only got a 3 because it's not necessarily delivering on the interesting aspects of the story. I will still probably read volume 3 just to see if they manage to wrap it up in a satisfactory way, but at this point, not sure how I'm feeling about it. Okay, 3.25. We have The Tyrant's Tomb by Rick Riordan. This is the 4th book in the Trials of Apollo series. This one got a 3.25, which I think is a bit higher than the last one that I read. In this one, we're dealing with part of the prophecy that deals with someone having to die. I did enjoy the plot elements of this one. I thought there were some interesting beats here. I feel like this one a little bit got away from my issue with the 3rd one, which was all talk and no action. I think we did get a bit more action in this one. My problem with this one now is something I'm only noticing now, but definitely is a problem with the previous ones too, is that it's relying a lot on characters that are introduced in the original Percy Jackson, like the 5 and then the second 5. A lot of those characters are being introduced and worked into this story. A lot of the tension relies on you caring about those characters. If I'm just reading this series, I don't care who Jason is. I don't care what the other one with the flying dragon and the guy with the flaming stick. This series on its own has not given me any of an emotional investment into these characters yet. It's kind of like, wow, this person is in mortal danger. And I'm like, cool, but who is he? Why should I care? Oh, I have to have read an entirely different series to get any kind of the emotional stakes. This being a separate series than those, it's not like this is book 4 in the series where those characters were introduced. And it's not like we are introducing them in book 1 and continuing that tension to them being in danger in book 4. It is, remember this character? No? Well, they're in mortal danger. 3.25, because again, some of the plot elements were a lot better in this one, but I'm noticing some of the kind of flaws in how the characters are used in this one. Next at 3.25 is one of the anthologies that I read in July, and that is Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction anthology. And this was edited by Shane Hawk and Theodore C. Van Alst Jr. with a whole whack of authors. This one got a 3.25. When I rate anthology, I do individually rate the stories based on how I enjoyed them, and then I take the average. With anthologies, there's going to be hits and misses within a collection. The problem I had with a lot of these stories is the same problem I had with a lot of the stories in Out There Screaming, the Jordan Peele anthology. A lot of these built up to something interesting and then ended. It felt more like, here's a pitch of the book I would want you to read, and not necessarily a full completed story on its own. And I just don't really vibe with that style of short story. I want up front to be interested and have that attention kept through the whole story. A lot of the stories in here did deal with the history of colonialism, displacement, and I thought a lot of those themes were interesting. There were a few of the stories that I did really like. There's one about like a professor who collects heads. I really thought that one was interesting. But most of them just fell in that kind of mid-range of being a 3, which gave the anthology overall a 3.25. Moving on to 3.5 stars, most common ratings. So we do have 7 books here. The first is How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. This was a small town kind of murder mystery where this woman's great aunt, when she was a teenager, was given a fortune that said basically that she was going to be murdered. Her great aunt spends basically her entire life collecting dirt on people to try and solve who is going to eventually murder her. Then when she is murdered, she has left in her will that her estate goes to the person who can solve her murder within the week, and one of the people competing is our main character, her great niece. The book is told in the split perspective of her, great niece trying to solve the murder in the current day. The second perspective is the great aunt's kind of diary entries of what happened back when she was a teenager. This was one of my book club's picks for last month. We kind of had some discussions about this book, about how, one, the author is originally American and then moved to the UK, and it didn't feel very British. It's also set in this small town, and the small town feels like it has 15 people in it who all know each other and have vendettas against each other. It just felt a little off setting wise. The characters were a little hard to keep straight. We kind of joked that we needed a family tree of all of who these people were. Also their ages, because there was some characters that were apparently in their 20s that some of us thought were 60. I think there were some kind of writing challenges and atmosphere problems with this book, but the mystery was fairly interesting. One of the reveals was interesting, the second reveal not so much, and also if you think about it too long, the plot holes start to show up. But it was fun, so a 3.5 overall. I probably won't pick up the sequel just because I got too many series to get through, that this one just not good enough. And another one of the book club picks that I had to read in July was Bellies by Nicola Danan. This book was a love story, not a romance, a love story about this couple who, when they first started dating, were a gay couple. And then one of the people in the relationship realized that they were actually a trans woman, and they start their transition. The book kind of analyzes how this changes the dynamic of their relationship over the years, how it feels to be the person going through this transition and worrying about losing your support system, as well as being the person who gets into a relationship thinking your partner is one way and having them slowly over time become essentially a different person, and what that does both to your romantic attraction to them but also to your physical attraction to them. I give this one a 3.5. I definitely think it was an interesting concept and definitely a story that some people would probably find very relatable. But I think a lot of the time with this book I was drawing parallels to Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I think there were some similarities here about the growth of a relationship throughout the years and the mixing of the personal and the professional, because the trans woman in the relationship is also a playwright and essentially writes a play about their breakup and causes a fallout. Just, I think I liked Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow better, and it did this book a disservice that I was seeing those parallels because I didn't enjoy this one as much as I did that one. So if you wanted like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, but with less video game references and with queer characters, maybe you would like Bellies. It might be the book for you, but this one, 3.5, like it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't my favorite. Next at 3.5, we have A Murderous Relation by Deanna Raybourn. This is book 5 in the Veronica Speedwell series. Veronica Speedwell is our main character. She is a lepidopterist living in Victorian England, and she sometimes gets roped into solving crimes, along with her friend, potentially something more, Stoker. In this one, they are called by a member of the royal family to investigate like a brothel where one of the royal family has given a custom piece of jewelry to like the madam of the brothel, and they've been asked to retrieve it. While also in the background of everything going on, Jack the Ripper's doing his thing. I was enjoying the plot at the beginning. I thought it was so interesting, and then we hit about like 2/3 of the way in, and it brought in some elements of the story from a previous book and made the rest of the book feel a bit repetitive because it just kind of felt like the same thing again. So it got a 3.5 because it did set up an interesting premise, but kind of lost it. We are also building up the relationship between Veronica and Stoker, but we reached like a crescendo at the end of book 4 to then decrescendo in the beginning of this book. Like, oh no, because there was like a flood or something, they haven't been able to consummate the tension that they had built at the end of the book. It's what I'm here for at this point, and you're not paying it off. Maybe I will finally get the relationship by the end of the next book. Another 3.5, Leather and Lark by Brynne Weaver. This is the second book in the Ruinous Love trilogy. In the first one, we had 2 serial killers who fall into a relationship. In this one, it's the female serial killer's best friend, Lark, who is a singer, but also maybe a serial killer herself. And then also the male love interest from the first book's brother, Lachlan, who is like a hitman, contracted to the mafia for like contract killings and cleanups. It is an enemies to lovers because Lark and Lachlan met without realizing that they had met, and Lachlan was an asshole to Lark. But then there's like something going on with the crime families where Lark is forced to marry Lachlan in order to keep both her family as well as Lachlan, you know, her best friend's husband's brother, safe. So it's kind of fake marriage, enemies to lovers, that kind of trope. This got a 3.5 for me. I felt like the quirkiness that was really the strength of the first one is mostly missing from this. It takes itself a bit more seriously, and therefore it loses the fun for me. And the only reason this got a 3.5 is because if you can see all of my red tabs here, that's every time they mention Keanu Reeves. Not Keanu Reeves movies, just Keanu Reeves by name. Obviously identified a lot with Lark because yes, I am going to name drop Keanu Reeves at every opportunity. And while they describe the male lead as Constantine era Keanu mixed with Tom Hardy in Mad Max, he was just okay. I don't know. I didn't connect to him as much as I did with Lark. This one is just a 3.5. I'll still read the third one. I just hope it can bring a bit more of the fun energy that Butcher and Blackbird had. Next book is City by Clifford D. Simak. This is a science fiction novel. This is written kind of like an oral history of the relationship between humans, robots, and dogs as technology progresses. It's told in, I think, 8 different parts throughout different centuries, millennia, etc. Start kind of in a time where humans are largely moving out of cities and abandoning them, and that kind of honestly reminded me of pandemic era when everybody was like, remote work, see ya, I'm moving to the country. That kind of resonated with me. And then throughout the 8 different stories, you get how dogs kind of evolved to be smarter, and then what it meant to the robots that were also left behind by the humans. Stories are kind of supposed to be told from the perspective of like a dog historian who's not entirely sure that humans ever really existed. I thought there were some really interesting elements here, but I really wish I had leaned into more being from the dog or the robot's perspectives. I think a lot of the times when it was like the humans having conversations amongst themselves, I don't even care. I want to know what the dog thinks about this. So 3.5, I think this had some really interesting points, and I could definitely see that this was a product of its time, being post-World War II, Cold War era, and the anxieties that came with seeing the devastation of the World War and then leading into the technological development that was happening during the Cold War. But it does have that kind of post-war sci-fi writing style that I sometimes find a bit hard to get through. So 3.5, because great concept, just a little bit of a tougher writing style for me to get into. Next is Dead Reckoning by Charlaine Harris. I did get at least one of the Sookie Stackhouse books read last month. I didn't finish the series before my birthday, but I got one of them done. This is the 11th one in the series. It's about Sookie, who is deep in the web of politics between vampires, shifters and werewolves, fairies, and all types of mystical creatures who are coming out of the coffin, I think is the cliche way they say it in the show. This one is really a bit of the payoff that we've been building to in some of the ones leading up to this. It's been like a new vampire king taking over the state of Louisiana, and Eric, who's an existing sheriff from the old regime, is not happy with the new leadership, so they stage an assassination plot. That was pretty interesting. It's still not going to be high literature enough to get a 5. It's not Brandon Sanderson level writing, let's be honest, but this one was fairly good. It was a palate cleanser. It was something I could read in a day or two and then move on from, so 3.5 for this one. I'm still enjoying the series overall, but they're not the best. And I'm now almost finished. And the final 3.5 is This Skin Was Once Mine and Other Disturbances by Eric LaRocca. Eric LaRocca writes like short story collections that are in the horror genre. Based on the foreword to this collection, the stories were supposed to induce a feeling of like claustrophobia and focus on toxic relationship dynamics. The titular story, the very first one in the collection, The Skin Was Once Mine, I really loved. It's about this girl who's been no contact with her mother for like 20 years. She like went off to boarding school because she couldn't talk to her mother anymore, and then her dad dies and she has to return to her childhood home where her mother is to make the arrangements, and finds out a bit more about what her father and her mother have been up to since she left the house. I didn't really expect the kind of twist thing there, so I did really enjoy that one. There was a story about a man who like has a fetish for embedding glass into his skin. That one was okay. Not the best, but like still fairly interesting. And then I don't remember the last one. I remember that I didn't really like it, which is why this got a 3.5. So I still think the collection overall is worth reading because I did like the majority of the stories in it. It was just one of the stories I didn't like that kind of brought the average rating down. Last few Eric LaRocca's I've read haven't been great for me. I haven't really loved them, so I was honestly pleasantly surprised that I did enjoy some of the books in this particular collection. Hair's going up because it is too damn hot to keep it down anymore, and we're getting serious with the 3.75s. The first 3.75 is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Satanto. This is about this little old Chinese lady who has a very regimented schedule and is always kind of getting into other people's business, and one day she finds a dead body in her tea shop and she calls the police, and the police are just like, drug overdose, man. I don't know what you want us to do. But she's absolutely convinced it was murder. So she starts rounding up suspects and investigating the murder herself. And the way she does that is like showing up to people's house with food. When I tell you I was craving Chinese food so badly while reading this book because the descriptions of food made everything sound so delicious. Mystery was also pretty interesting. The characters were really strong here. It got a 3.75 because part of the plot hinges on NFTs. When I tell you that it immediately dated this book, I hated that when that was all happening and I didn't want to be reminded of it. So 3.75 losing points for NFT mention. Second 3.75 is Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley. I'm going to show it this way because there is a interlibrary loan sticker on the front that has my library card number on it. So, Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley. This is the same author as the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World series. It is a graphic novel about this restaurant owner who's been struggling to try and open her second restaurant when she finds these magic mushrooms that allow her to undo one mistake in her life as long as that mistake happened within the restaurant. She starts fixing something small, like the cook in her restaurant accidentally got burned on something, so she undoes that. And then slowly she starts to try to fix more and more complex things in her life with knock-on effects as to what's happening. I give this a 3.75. I did enjoy the characters in this one, especially the waitress that she befriends. It is kind of about the quarter life crisis. What have I done with my 20s and what could I have done better to put me into a better place by my 30s? Having just recently turned 30 myself, I definitely related to that. I didn't care for Katie, the main character. I feel like this might be a case I related too much to the bad things about the character and that made me not like the character. So it gets a 3.75. Might have liked this a bit more if I had liked the main character a bit more. 4 stars. One I already talked about down in the 3 stars, which was Faithless Volume 1, so I'm not going to go over that one again. One book I'm not going to go into detail on because it's Overcoming Binge Eating. It's a nonfiction book about a program on how to overcome binge eating. I read it. It was a 4. I don't really want to go into any more detail than that. The most important book of this entire thing, the Book of Elsewhere by Keanu Reeves and China Millville. The book that I was most excited for coming out this year. It did get a 4. I have an entire 27-minute reading vlog on all of my thoughts of this book, so I will keep it brief. This is about our main character B, who is immortal and works for this government agency called UNIT, when all of a sudden a pig is dropped into the sewer and makes other people temporarily immortal, so B is trying to investigate who put this pig in the sewers. That is the kind of frame of the plot, but this is a lot more of a meditation on what it means to be immortal, what it means to leave your family behind, what it means to grieve. This is a lot more philosophical musing than it is a hard-hitting action about a super berserker killer. I was really intrigued to find out where the plot was going, even if the plot itself wasn't the strongest, and I did enjoy what I was reading, and the logic of bringing up those discussions was good, so again, I will link the full video of my thoughts on that so you can see how I felt as I was going through. This got a 4, which means it's good enough to stay on my shelf and my new Keanu Reeves shrine. Staying on books with the name Keanu Reeves on the cover, I also read Keanu Reeves Is Not in Love with You by Becky Holmes. This is a nonfiction book about fake celebrity romance scams where you'll be on Twitter and all of a sudden a fake Keanu Reeves account is following you and in your DMs like, hey, this is the secret account my management doesn't know about. I would love to fly out to meet you because you are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I just need you to send me $500 so my management doesn't find out that we're meeting. This went over a lot of different type of scam that happen on social media and how everybody is vulnerable to these type of scams because they will target people who are already vulnerable in other ways. And Becky Holmes also includes some Twitter conversations where she's had trolling the people who have tried to scam her. There's really a humorous approach to this serious topic, which made it a bit more accessible, and she also showed a lot of empathy for the people who do fall for these scams, which you often don't see when it's reported on in the news or in the comment section of those same news articles, is people like, well, I'm too smart to get scammed. So she really does highlight how these scams work to convince you that they're real, and again, how they go after people who are in otherwise vulnerable situations. I thought that this was a really good way to do this book because it was fun with those like troll conversations while also being informative. It did just lose some points for me on credibility in my nonfiction pile because Becky Holmes is not an academic of the topic. She doesn't work in the policing of these scams. She is just a layman who ended up having to do a lot of research on it because she was being targeted by these scams. 3 for credibility because she doesn't necessarily have like academic credentials to back up what she's saying, but I don't necessarily that detracts from the overall purpose of the book, which is to make learning about these scams a bit more accessible so that it reaches a broader audience. We have one book that got a 4.5 for the month, so close to that 5-star, and that is the Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. This is about a family who moves back to the father's childhood home after his own father passes away, and then weird things happen to each of them kind of individually. So the mom like sculpts an owl that all of a sudden takes flight and moves away. The son meets this new friend who says that he can do magic, and that all kind of converges into the Book of Accidents. And I don't want to go any more into the plot than that because I think this is one you have to go into blind to be fully engaged and involved in the suspense that is built through the storytelling, and I did really end up enjoying this one. The only thing is it is so long, so maybe we could have shortened that up because at times the pacing does drag a little bit. But overall, I do think that the end pays off. It was worth the slog in the end. But I'm always a fan of maybe let's shorten things to keep on the main track here. And we have 2 new entries into the 5-star club of 2024. The first one is The Adventure Zone Suffering Game. I'm a big fan of the McElroy brothers. The Suffering Game was very specifically the plot line in that podcast where it's like, oh shit, this is brilliant. So I was really excited for the Suffering Game to come out. This one does go through the Suffering Game, and then it also includes the interlude that will lead into Lost Years. The art style is always really cool in these. I obviously already love the plot because I love the podcast, so for me, this was probably never going to get anything less than a 5 because I'm already bought into the concept. This is a graphic novel of the McElroy brothers podcast, The Adventure Zone, specifically their first story arc, The Bureau of Balance, is their Dungeons and Dragons campaign. In the Suffering Game, they go to this like circus where they have to play these carnival games, all of which have the intention of making them suffer so that they can win the ultimate prize of this artifact they're trying to retrieve. This is pretty far into the series. If you want to read it, start with the first one, Here There Be Goblins. 5-star from me for this one, obviously. And the last 5-star, you will already know if you watch my vlog of reading my siblings' recommendations, Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson is like half of my 5-star list at this point. Elantris is a fantasy novel within the Cosmere universe. We have 3 main plot lines. The princess who was supposed to marry a prince, and then when she arrives, she's told that the prince is dead. We have the prince who is not dead, but has become kind of an undead creature. Previously, you would ascend to godhood and become this immortal being, and now you still ascend and become immortal, but you keep all of the pain of your injuries. So if you stub your toe, you're feeling that stubbed toe forever now. He's been exiled to the city among all of the other people who have gone through this transformation. And then we have a priest who is trying to use the existence of these undead creatures to argue that everybody has turned away from his specific version of the truth and they need to repent and convert to his religion to save themselves. I think that's the quickest I've been able to explain this plot and most cohesive. So this is Brandon Sanderson's first book, and it is so well written. Like, I can't even. I was able to keep track of all the characters. I was invested in all of the characters and what all of their plot lines were going on with. I could understand the motivations of the characters that I didn't like. World building, Brandon Sanderson is just his mind. I don't know. this is a 5-star. Brandon Sanderson owns my shelves now. The only thing I want to do is read more Cosmere. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of July. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and consider subscribing so you can catch my future month's wrap-ups as well. If you made it to the end of this video, let me know the best book that you read in July, or leave the mushroom emoji for the magical mushrooms in seconds. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.